The Stones and the Mist, a novel of land and the long memory, written by Cindy Hansen, narrated by Dan and Cindy, copyright 2026, Holistic Research Canada. All rights reserved, fiction disclaimer. This is a work of historical fiction. While rooted in the documented history and mythology of the Faroe Islands, the Lukting, and the Norse Gaelic settlements of the 9th century, the characters, events, and spiritual dimensions of this story are imagined. Dedication. To the voices buried in silence, the women whose stories were never carved in stone, and the land that remembers what men forget. Author's note: before the law was written, the land spoke, and I wrote this book to listen. The Stones and the Mist grew from a long-standing fascination with how truth moves through time, in landforms, in memory, in the more than human world that holds stories older than any written record. My professional life has been shaped by questions of equity and care, but beneath it has always been an older listening, a desire to understand what endures across cultures and what wisdom remains when systems shift or disappear. Set in the Faroe Islands in 825 CE, this story follows the echoes that survive beneath conquest and translation, the truths carried by stones, tides, mist, and the relationships that bind all beings. I wrote this book to honor those echoes and to return to a way of knowing that is shared, elemental, and still alive beneath us. Thank you for listening with me.
Prologue. Before the boats. Tell it the old way, the way the stones might tell it if stones held voices. Before boats, before names, before story hardened into story, someone carved spirals into basalt. Their purpose is lost, but the marks remain, softened by centuries of rain and salt, placed where the land changes angle, where water seeps from stone, where birds gather for reasons no one can name. These places feel different. Some call them thin places, where the boundary between worlds wears thin. Others call them anomalies, acoustic pockets, mineral springs, microclimates, perhaps both. Perhaps the question itself is wrong, because the ancient carvers may not have separated sacred from physical the way we do. The spirals were already old when the first monks arrived, already enduring when the Norse came. The why left with the carvers. What remains is the mark and the invitation to listen. If you stand where they stood, if you place your hand on stone worn, smooth by weather, you may feel a hush, a warmth, a presence. Not proof, only practice, not certainty, only attention. The story begins in uncertainty. It ends there too. What happens in between is what matters. Chapter 1. The Second Boat. The island rose out of the mist before it rose out of the sea. Freydis saw it first, 10 winters old, restless, unable to stay below decks, belonging to neither the world behind nor whatever waited ahead. She stood near the prow, gripping the salt-slick gunwale, eyes searching the grey. She was tall for 10 winters, already as tall as her mother, broad through the shoulders, her father's Norse frame filling out early, golden-haired, her uncle's jaw in the set of her face, her father's height in her spine. Only her eyes were different, green, the particular green of shallow water over dark stone. Her mother's eyes, her grandfather's eyes, the eyes of people who saw what others did not. The mist lay thick on the water, a living thing, folding and unfolding in slow breath. And then something darker moved within it. Not cloud, not storm, stone. The cliffs emerged as though the sea were giving birth to them. Great black walls rising straight from the water, layered in long horizontal bands. Basalt, though she did not yet have the word for the fire-born stone that held the island together. She felt it anyway, a density, a weight, a presence. Ireland had cliffs too, but she barely remembered them. Years of following her father's circuits had blurred the old coastline into memory smoke. Norse settlements, Irish ones, the particular freedom of a man's daughter moving through his world, belonging to both and neither, understanding more than anyone thought she did. Her father had been dead 2 winters now, long enough for Hugin to learn of it, make his plans, seek his recruits. He'd come for them in late summer. Not rescue, not raid. Simply a man arriving to collect what his brother's death had made his brother's debts, his brother's tools, his brother's woman and daughter. 1.5 moons since then. It felt like another life entirely. These cliffs were different, too steep, too absolute. They looked less shaped by erosion than by intention, as though some ancient force had pressed the rock upward and frozen it mid-gesture. Her mind made patterns, shoulders, faces, bodies half-turned. Rock giants, she thought, or only her mind's old habit of giving meaning to stone. Behind her the boat groaned into shallower water. Men shouted, the hard, crisp Norse commands she had learned to obey without appearing to understand. Oars lifted, ropes were thrown, boots thundered across the deck, and within the rising noise her mother's voice, quiet but steady, the voice of someone who had learned long ago to create order inside chaos. Fridas, a hand on her shoulder, come back from the edge. But Fridas couldn't move. The island was pulling at her chest, not metaphor, not imagination, a physical tug, as if a string buried deep behind her sternum had tightened, and something on the land had taken hold. Or she was seasick, or she was frightened. She didn't know which. She only knew it felt like recognition. The boat scraped against stone. Men splashed into knee-deep water, hauling the vessel into place. Hugin strode past. The man who was her uncle, her stepfather, her captor, her protector. He had inherited her and Aina the same way he inherited his dead brother's knife and debts. Now he waded toward shore with the posture of someone who believed leadership was a thing carved by action, not granted by others. Steady, Aina murmured to Fridas. Head down, be useful. Not yet a moon of that instruction. Aina had not needed to say it before Hugin came to collect what the inheritance had made his. Before that, the instruction had been different. Stand straight. Speak both languages. Let them see your father in your face. For 2 winters after he died, they had managed. 2 winters of Aina being careful in ways Freydis had not fully understood. Then Hugin came, and the instruction changed before the next dawn. Be visible enough to keep, invisible enough not to provoke. Freydis climbed over the side into water so cold it stabbed her ankles. The shock took her breath. She waded toward shore, boots sinking into pebbled sand. The first stone she touched was dark basalt, slick with frost salt. When her palms settled on it for balance, she felt warmth. Not warmth exactly, something like it, a sensation beneath temperature, the feeling of someone standing behind you in a room you thought was empty. She looked at the stone, just basalt, just tide-laced moss, just lichen and spray. But her palm felt a presence. She held it a moment longer, long enough for someone to notice, long enough for her mother's hand to tighten on her arm. Freydis, help with the supplies. She pulled her hand away. Her palm was red with cold. Nothing unusual, nothing mystical. But she looked back at the stone as she worked, and it looked back. The first boat. Grimur Kamban and his people waited on the upper slope. They had been here 4 months, long enough to claim the driest ground for their shelters, the spring they had found, the flat area they used for their evening fire. Long enough to understand what this island took and what it grudgingly gave. Long enough to almost starve. Hugin approached Grimur with the careful posture of second arrival politics, not submissive, not equal, something between. Grimur, Hugin said, we came. You came, Grimur replied. 4 months late. I went to Galway Bay first, for supplies. A gesture toward Aina and Freydis, for family. 30 more people stepped off the boat, Irish, Norse, children, the exhausted, the captured, the willing, the unwilling. Grímur's gaze moved over them, calculating. It lingered a moment on the woman and the girl. The woman slight, red-haired, freckled across the nose and cheeks, unmistakably Irish in every line of her face. The girl tall beside her, golden-haired, broad-shouldered, Norse as a ship's prow. Hugin's kin, plainly, except for the eyes, both of them, mother and daughter, carrying the same green, the same quality of attention that made a man feel briefly, uncomfortably seen. He looked away first. 60 mouths now, he said. This land barely feeds 30. The supplies will help, Hugin said. And we brought knowledge. Irish knowledge. We have Irish knowledge, Grímur snapped. My mother was Irish, and that hasn't saved us. A woman stepped forward from the first boat people, Muirn, Irish, Christian, Hugin's first wife. She and Aine looked at each other across the space between boats. Two women taken by raids, both carrying survival strategies shaped by that taking. Muirn's cross glinted in the cold light. Aine's hands moved in patterns that predated the church. Neither spoke to the other, not yet. But the air between them held decades of stolen women's history. The fire. By nightfall, shelters were raised and fires lit. People sorted themselves into the invisible categories of power. First boat here, second boat there, women by the smaller fire, men by the larger. Freydis sat at the edge of the lesser fire. Aine beside her, Muirn across the flames, watching everything with careful, guarded eyes. The men drank, not enough to waste, but enough to loosen their tongues. North of Dublin, someone said, we dropped a man into the monastery well, pulled silver out by the bucket. Laughter. I got my wife in a raid, Björn said. She fought, broke her arm dragging her to the boat, screamed for 2 days. How long until she learned? By spring. More laughter. Not cruel, just ordinary. The laughter of men who lived in a world where women's screaming was part of life. Freydis felt Aine's breathing change beside her, slowing, tightening, the practiced stillness of prey animals. Mine had a child already, another man said. Not mine. Killed it when it was born. Didn't want another man's get in my house. Freydis swallowed bile. Her father had laughed at fires like this one. She remembered it. Not the words, but the sound of it, the way firelight caught his face, the way she had sat at his knee and not understood what the laughter meant. She had been his daughter then, Norse enough to sit at the larger fire, Irish enough to feel her mother's hands moving in those quiet patterns and know they meant something the men around them could not see. 2 winters since he died. Not yet a moon since Hugin came to claim them. Not yet a moon from his fire to this one. From her father's daughter to Hugin's obligation. She had been at the larger fire. The distance between that fire and this one was not so many moons. It only felt like a different world because this was the world. She was only beginning to understand how completely it had always been this world, even when she had belonged to it. Even when she had sat at her father's knee and thought belonging meant safety. Something in her chest felt hot, wrong, like the island was pressing against her ribs. She put a hand to her sternum, as if steadying something, or steadying herself. Night. Later, when the fires died, Aine led Freydis outside, not far, never far, but enough for the cold to clear the noise from the air. I saw you touch the stone, Aine said quietly. Freydis nodded. What did it feel like? Warm, Freydis said. Or like noticing, like it noticed me. Aine closed her eyes, a memory passing through her. My father could feel things in stone, she said. Water beneath the earth, storms before the sky. He called it knowing. Was it real? Freydis whispered. Maybe, Aine said. Maybe not. But it worked. She touched Freydis's face. Listen to whatever speaks. But be careful. Strange knowledge makes you threatening. I know. You don't, Aina said gently. Not yet, but you will. Dawn. Before dawn, Fridas woke with her heart pounding. A pull, a calling, or the need to piss, or fear. She slipped out into the cold. The stone at the waterline was waiting. She crouched, laid both palms on it, cold, just cold. Then, warmth. Not in the stone, in her. A stirring sensation, a noticing. She felt a pulse, like a tension, turning toward her. Not words, not a voice. Something like, here, you're here, good. Or maybe her own longing shaped into feeling. She pressed her hands harder until they went numb. The warmth faded. The stone returned to being stone. But something had happened, or she had imagined something happening, or the boundary between the two was thinner here than anywhere she had ever been. She didn't know. She only knew the island was watching. The boy. As she rose to leave, she saw someone on the slope. A boy, 12 winters, watching her with careful eyes. He approached. You touched the stone, he said. Fridas stiffened. My grandmother did that, he said, Irish. She said stones held knowing. Who are you? Fridas whispered. Gudmundur, he said, Grimur's son. A dangerous boy then, a useful boy, a boy whose attention mattered. I won't tell anyone, Gudmundur said, but I saw you, and I think you see things, like she did. Fridas said nothing. Gudmundur looked toward the land. There's water here, he said. Somewhere. My father can't find it. Fridas felt that tug again, sternum to soil, the sense of something listening. I think I know where it is, she whispered. Gudmundur studied her. Tell me, he said. I'll tell him it was my grandmother's knowing. Fridas met his eyes. Alliance. Yes, she said.